Thank you. 감사합니다. Thank you. Okay. It's really a pleasure to be here. Not only is it extensive reading, but my career began here in Korea. I don't know if any of you know that, but a number of years ago, I was in the United States Army. I was stationed in Yongsan. And I began actually teaching English to my Katusa friends, and things led from there. So when I'm back here, I feel like this is where it all began. I'm coming back home again. It's really quite nice. Except Seoul has changed a lot since I was here. Okay, now I'm going to be talking about extensive reading. And if you don't have a handout, you could get with someone nearby and share a handout. Okay, are there any more handouts? I made about 65 to 70. So try to, if you don't have one, find someone, share, introduce yourself, because I'm actually going to have you do some work together. There's going to be some partner work.
How many are missing, and I'll see if I can get
Okay, how many need a handout? Oh, come on, really? I would say about 30 to 40.
I'd say 50.
50 more, okay.
I'll try.
Okay, we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Okay, now, I've got two goals that I would like to accomplish. And the first one is to look at developments in the field of ER since 1998. Now, some of you may know why I chose 1998. Anyone remember? Yeah, exactly. This is when Day and Banford came out, and we started looking at what is extensive reading and tried to define the field and whatnot. So what I wanted to do was, it's been 15 years. It's hard to believe, but it's been 15 years. So I wanted to take a look at the practice of ER and the research that's been done into it, so we could then look in our crystal ball and gaze ahead another 15 years and see where are we going to be. Think we'll all be together in 15 more years? Okay, so then what I'm going to do is, based on this, I'm looking at this. Okay, now, so here's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to look first at these 15 years and look at both research and practice, and then I'm going to look at the next 15 years, and I'm going to talk about what I think is going to happen to the practice of ER. It's going to change drastically, in my mind. Okay? And then I'm going to offer some research directions based on what we've done the last 15 years. What are the holes? Or as we'd say in Hawaii, what are the pukas? Right, Mark? What are the pukas, right? What are the holes? What do we need to fill? Okay? Now, there are always buts in life, aren't they? But before we begin, we need to define extensive reading. What in the world is extensive reading? And I think everybody's going to be in for a little bit of surprise. Two things. Jot it down if you've got the handout. If not, write on the back of your hand. I'm just kidding. Just think then if you don't have anything to write on. What is ER? That's your assignment right now, about a minute. And then share with someone sitting next to you. What is extensive reading? This is not a test, don't worry. What is extensive reading? Share. That's right. If you don't know the person who's sitting next to you, get to know them. You might meet someone you know, or you'd like to know. Okay? What is extensive reading? Don't be alone. Meet with someone. Okay? Jump in with these people here, behind you. Okay? Okay, find someone. Okay, go with her. Get together. No, right there. There. Good. Okay. Good. Okay, all set, Charlie? Okay, cool. Good, you're talking. right? My lunch partner, talk, right? Okay, we've got some seats over here, or seats. We're just starting. Okay, now expand one more time. Go to a larger group. A larger group. Try to get more people around you. The four of you. Try to turn around with the people around you. Try to even get more. Okay? Yes, good. Get more. A bigger group this time. Okay, look at this question. Is there agreement? Is there agreement? Really? How many have disagreements? Some disagreements? Yeah, there will be some. People might have some different ideas than you. Okay, now what I want to do now is, before I tell you what I discovered when I was looking at what has happened, what I want to do now is ask you what is not ER. I'm serious. If something is called ER and you look at it and you say, that's not extensive reading, what is it? What criteria or what criterion might you be using to say, that is not ER? Okay? Go. Another way of looking at it, what must be there for it to be ER? Okay. Now, what I'm going to do now is take you down the road that my colleague Julian and I traveled a number of years ago, and see where you are in relation to what Julian and I said are the top 10 characteristics, or we changed it later to principles of extensive reading. But if someone said to me, what in the world is ER, I'd offer this. This is just a quick, what I would say is, it involves students reading a lot of easy, interesting books that they select themselves. Now, in my mind, if something doesn't involve this, it ain't ER. I don't care what they call it. But I'm going to explain a little bit more about this, because when I had to send in an abstract and I gave a title, Extending ER, actually that term had different meaning. It now has a different meaning to me. Before I was looking ahead, extending ER. But when I looked at the past 15 years, I said, man, ER has extended. And you'll see what I mean by that. Okay, now, we had what we called our top 10, and this was the first one that we started with. What we did was look at a lot of extensive reading programs that had been in existence, and then what we did was try to distill from these successful effective ER programs, what made them successful. And then we would look at other programs that weren't going so well, and we would try to compare. And that's where we came up with this. And then there's that I-1 business, that's got to be easy. And I remember that one of the first lectures I gave on this, I was in Kuala Lumpur, KL, and giving a lecture. And I introduced this, and I talked about I-1 and I+1s, Krashen's input, and all this stuff. Handouts are coming around. Raise your hand if you need a handout. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, we'll try to do this.
Okay, and so I remember after my lecture, a teacher came up to me and said, "Oh, Dr. Day, I know what's wrong with my extensive reading program." And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "The students are reading at I+85." So that just sort of sticks in my mind, Okay, now, in addition, there should be a lot of different types of material because students are going to, in order to do extensive reading, they've got to be doing the reading. And if you have a wide variety of materials on different topics, etc., that will entice students to do the reading that they need to do. We need a handout down here if we have any left. Okay, over here.
You're going into your third printing.
Okay. Okay, now, related to number 2 is number 3. 2 and 3 sort of go together. Self-selection from the wide variety of materials. If you don't have number 2, it's going to be hard to have number 3. And if you don't have number 3, why do you have number 2? If you see what I mean. If the student's not going to select and you're just going to give it to them, you don't need a wide variety. Doesn't matter. So these sort of go together. Now, number 4 is the big one. Okay? This is the extensive of extensive reading. We know from research, it doesn't matter if it's your L1 or your L10, the more reading you do, the better reader you become. It's just so clear. The research is just overwhelming on that. Now, in addition, we should be reading for pleasure, information, enjoyment, general understanding. Okay? Now, this is what sort of sets ER, among other things, apart from intensive reading, IR. Generally, in the usual classroom practices of reading, students read for academic purposes. They read because the teacher tells them to read. And they know they're going to be followed by comprehension questions or quizzes. So they wouldn't be reading for these three things. But in ER, that's what they're doing. Now, the number 6 is controversial. Reading is its own reward. When we looked at that, we found that the programs that really did work, they weren't followed up by book reports. And in my own experience, students hate to write book reports. And you know what? Teachers hate to read them too, right? Right? So this idea that reading is its own reward. We don't give tests. And if this happens, what I've often said to teachers is it's death by comprehension questions. It kills the joy of reading, but not everybody agrees. But I think that if we want to have activities that are based on the reading that the students do, in other words, we use the extensive reading as a jumping off point for other types of things that we could do with the books, then it's to me it's okay. I'll talk about that in a minute or two. But I think that following up with extensive reading activities is very different from following up with comprehension questions or book reports or quizzes, that sort of thing. Okay? Now, number 7, because the reading is easy, because the students are choosing it, generally reading speed is faster rather than slower. And some of you may have heard Paul Nations talk a little while ago, whatnot. We know from research that when reading rate improves, fluency goes up. And when fluency goes up, what happens with comprehension? Generally increases. Slow readers are poor readers. More fluent readers read better, higher comprehension. Again, the research is clear on that. Okay, and so this is what happens in ER. Okay, reading is individual and silent. This was almost in response to grammar translations where students go around the room, stand up, read a sentence, translate it, sit down, next student, next student, next student. So we were saying reading is individual and silence. In other words, it's real reading. It's not pretend reading. And number 9, orientation and guidance is very, very important. As Julian and I wrote in our book, Students accustomed to wading through difficult foreign language texts might drown when suddenly plunged into a sea of simple and stimulating materials. Don't you love the alliteration there, right? Okay, and the last one is the teacher is a role model, and we quoted from Christine Nuttall from the British Council then, reading is caught, not taught. Okay, and actually, when I'm teaching reading in the University of Hawaii, we have a course called Teaching Reading. I ask my students for a metaphor. A reading teacher is a something, something, something. Right, Aurora? Yeah, okay. And my metaphor for a reading teacher, based on extensive reading, is a reading teacher is a cheerleader. Go, go, you can read. Read, you read. Way to go. Read another book. Read, read, read. I have a PhD student at UH, and his metaphor for a reading teacher is this. A reading teacher is a drug dealer. Gets you hooked on books, right? Isn't that cool? Right? Okay. Anyway, so those are our top 10. Those are our principles, our top 10 principles that we found out. And to what extent did the discussion that you had before I introduced or reintroduced to some of you the top 10 principles? Were you guys pretty close? Sort of around the barn a little bit? I see some people saying yes, more or less. Okay, okay, good. Now, what do you think? Haley's shaking your head. You don't think so? Yeah, okay. If we were to look at a report of an extensive reading program and the students didn't do this, would it be ER? How about these ones? What do you think? Charlie, here. Yeah, you got it's sort of things we sort of need, right? Extending ER. Guess what's going on? Guess what's going on? Or how is ER actually practiced? Okay? So this is what happened. I looked at as many research or publications as I could with ER in the title. It had to say something, something extensive reading, or this is extensive reading. So then what I did was I then made sure that I wanted to get ones that were published in scholarly refereed journals. So I had to cut a bunch of stuff out. But I ended up with 38. And there's more. There's a bigger database, but I actually just ran out of time. Okay? So I've got 38 articles. Okay? And what I did was try to figure out from them what characteristics or what principles, according to what Julian and I said, were actually followed. Now remember, the N is 38. Okay, and the top one is this one. Learners read as much as possible. 25 of the 38 either explicitly said that, like Day and Banford's number 4, it's sort of something like that, or it was obvious from the report that students read a lot. Is this good or bad? How about the other 13 that called themselves ER? I'm serious. They didn't do this. They did not do this. One of them might have said they read a chapter a week in a book. And that was an extensive reading was in the title. Is that extensive reading? Okay. Oop, how did that go there? Gee whiz. Oh, I know. I prepared this on a Mac, and we're doing a Windows program. Okay, so I got to get up here. Okay. Okay. So the second one, remember the N is 38, 24 said learners choose, this self-selection. Okay, so we got our top two is reading a lot and self-selection. But remember, there are 14 more in which the students did not we're not allowed to choose what to read. Is that extensive reading? But who are we to say? Well, we paid our money for the conference. Maybe we, I don't know. Now, the next one and the next one. So these were the top, actually there are 6 of them that came in close here for 20. 3 were tied at 21. Okay, the material is easy, the purpose is this, and reading is individual and silent. So we could say that from the 38 studies, we have this showing up 21 to 25 times. 21 out of 38, 17, almost half, don't even mention these things. They don't have them. They don't follow them. Remember when I said I got a little bit excited when I was going extensive reading? I think the term has been extended. It didn't worry for a feature speak for me to extend extensive reading. And to tell the truth, I was really appalled at this, that these things are extensive reading. I thought, how can they call it extensive reading? Okay? Now, we've got some more left over here, and these are where we end up with. We remember 21 was the last figure. Drops to 17, 12, 11, 5. And I really like number 10. And there are only 5 studies actually discussed it and followed it. 5 out of 38. And to me, it's really, really important. But this was eye-opening. Here, this stuff here. And I would get things like, sometimes they would say, Day in Bamford, and then they say, however, in this program we had comprehension questions. We had this, we had that. It was interesting. Now, number 3, learners choose what they want was, as I said, it was number 24, and it was frequently discussed, but there was 8 studies, 8 studies in which they said this, and then they would say, but or however, the teacher did this, and the students were not allowed to select. So they recognized the importance in an extensive reading program of student self-selection, but they didn't do it. But they still called it extensive reading. Was it extensive reading? Okay, now, got it. Yeah, it was just something that I just couldn't get over it, okay? Book reports were very common. Comprehension questions were also very common, okay? Now, these I had to infer, okay? They didn't come right out and state it very frequently, but from the report, it was quite obvious that this was going on. So these didn't get as mentioned specifically, but when the authors described the programs, it was obvious to me that these principles were being met, and particularly this one here. Okay, now, here we go again. Hard for me to understand, okay? But when it was mentioned the 5 times, it was followed. So that one actually was, but still it's 5 out of 38. 33 didn't even mention this or didn't follow it. Okay, now, I'm going to give you some quotes just to see if they're eye-opening. I've got some good ones and some bad ones, what I would call in here. The features of the Guided Extensive Reading Program, actually that's what it's called, GER. This was in Malaysia. Seem to correspond with most of the principles. These include, and then they go through it here, basically like this. So I thought, okay, good. Okay, now it's not, it continues. We share their view that reading is its own reward. We didn't include comprehension questions. We also share, etc., etc., etc. Kind of cool, okay? Good. Now, isn't this nice? Look at this sucker, right? All the teachers, and remember the title of the articles always had extensive reading in it. But later on it got changed to the ex-Soviet Union, USSR, right? And which means uninterrupted, sustained, silent reading is USSR, what that means, okay? They started USSR. The reading program started at here to here. The students assembled at the courtyard at their designated class assembly areas by 7:10. They began their silent reading at the sound of a pre-programmed chime at 7:10 hours. Usually the disciplinary mistress, the DM, would be present to verbally remind the students to read if they did not heed the chime. The close of the USSR period was indicated by the DM telling the school to close your books. That's ER. Can you... I did this, but I don't want to identify. I got embarrassed about some of this stuff. I mean, golly. Oh, where is this? What country? Anyone want to make a guess? I'll give you the country. Singapore. This is Singapore. Okay, this is a good one here. The students in the study, this was ER. The students in this study read 3 chapter books. They were assigned chapters to read out of the books. And in this ER program, they read 3 chapter books over the course of 5 books. And here are the books, 1, 2, 3. In all of these books containing this, and this. Okay? No choice. Easy. Nothing. Assigned readings. Okay? Now, guess what happened when they finished reading the text in this extensive reading program? They were required to take detailed comprehension quiz at the beginning of the following class. This is extensive reading? Oh, my goodness. Okay, here's another one. Okay. Maybe not as egregious, but okay. Here's one, 2011. Maybe, maybe. It's okay. Okay. Good. Okay, this... Okay. This is a really cool one here, I think. Okay. We're going to be talking a bit about this kind of work. Okay. So, this looks good. This looks good to me. Now, here was a book that was with the title Extensive Reading in English Language Teaching. I got my copy and I was a happy camper. I thought, this is cool. Now the B word. But there were 5 chapters that had absolutely nothing to do with extensive reading in a book entitled Extensive Reading. Seriously, they had nothing to do with extensive reading. Period. There's no way you could even begin to stretch your imagination. This was extensive reading? Okay. Now, that was a little bit sort of, I don't know if it was depressing. At one point I got really depressed, but then I thought, 25 out of 38, 24 out of 38, okay, now let's look at the research. Now, I think what I found was that the major thrust of the research in the past 15 years looked at the affective side of extensive reading. And all of the reports that I was able to get my hands on showed this positive stuff. Positive attitudes, increase in motivation. There wasn't a study that I looked at that didn't report this, and that was kind of neat. Okay? In addition, we noted that, as we might expect, extensive reading had an influence on both reading comprehension and strategy development. While the studies that I read on strategy and ER didn't teach strategies, students actually were using strategies in extensive reading. Okay? It's another one. But there hasn't been much recently. In other words, this was really early on in the, 1998 to about 2004. And since then, in the last maybe 9 to 10 years, there hasn't been much on this at all. And I was a bit surprised, but maybe people are unwilling to do it because it's been done already, enough already. We don't need to continue to do this kind of research because it's been substantially demonstrated. Okay? Reading fluency, there's a lot of good work on that. Here is also the second area besides the affective domain in which a lot of the work has been done in vocab. Okay, a lot of vocab. Now, we know that they increase their knowledge of vocabulary. The studies are clear. Another but, the increases generally are small. Now, statistically, they could be significant, but the effect size is small on them. It's interesting how, when the control group and the treatment group are compared, there will be a significant difference between the treatment and the control, but they don't learn that many more words. In addition, the research focused on the learning of new words and didn't get into new meanings of all of words they already know. You got that? Okay. Think about how we would do that, though. How would you research words they already know that get more meanings? I don't know exactly how that could be done, but if any one of you could do this, this would be a major contribution. I'm convinced it occurs, but we don't have the evidence at this point. How could we do that? Okay? Now, limited studies on listening and speaking and writing. Limited studies. There have been some studies, but they've been limited. And also with just what I call foreign language competence, but we could call it grammar. One of the most recent ones was done in Germany with an immigrant student from Turkey, showing how he picked up some German grammar by just doing extensive reading. It was a case study, kind of nice study, but the studies have been fairly limited on this idea. Now, so there is some consistency. Note what I said here. Some consistency about what ER is. But I think the term is used loosely. Loosely. I keep coming back to remember we had 21, 21, 21, 24, 25 out of 38? I'd love to see like 35, 34, not the other figures. But anyway, okay, the term is loosely used. Now, then I asked myself this question. Are there core principles? Sort of what I ask you to do. Is there something that you would say, if a program isn't doing these things, it cannot be called extensive reading? Not all of Day and Bamford's 10. That's not important. But are there ones that are just so important that set extensive reading apart that without it, it's not ER? Okay. Now, if so, what might they be? Could we agree on it? I'm going to come back to this point in a second. Okay. Now, what I did then was set up what I'm calling the foreign language reading continuum, instruction continuum, pedagogic continuum. So what I did was say, on this side over here, where a program has all 10 principles, I call it pure ER. Anyone got a better word than pure? Real ER? I've gone through a number of different terms on this, the real deal, they got them. Then there's this term here that I would call modified ER, where there are many of the extensive reading principles, but not all of them. Some of them might be in violation, like this idea there may be some assignment afterward, or the selection may be somewhat limited, but they still do have some choice. And then I went to this idea what I'm calling some ER principles, and I'm calling it ER light. ER light. Okay? And then ER in name only, and I'm calling it fringe ER. And actually, I had one more word before fringe. Mark, can you remember what I would put before that?
I shouldn't say that.
Lunatic fringe. I played with that word. I called it the lunatic fringe. That they're out there somewhere and they're saying this is ER, but it doesn't have anything to do with ER. They're kind of loony, in that sense. But I took it off for here. It's on your handout, so it's ER in name only. And then at the other end of the foreign language reading continuum is intensive reading, and it's not even pretending to be ER. I mean, it is intensive reading. A lot of the material that we would buy from publishers, the main publishers, they're doing with strategies or skill building or stuff like that. That's over here. They're not even parading around as ER. Okay, now, what I want to do now is look ahead to the future and sort of gaze into a crystal ball and say, 15 years from now, wherever we are, we're gathered here again. What is ER going to look like, both in the research and in the practice? Okay? Now, this is kind of fun to do. Blended extensive reading. Blended extensive reading. I used the term hybrid for a while, but then I liked blended better. What does blended mean to you? Think for a minute. When I say blended ER. Jane, you got an idea?
Some of each mixed together.
Yeah, okay, a little bit of each, and it's not pretending to be, but, okay, now let me go back here. Blended EIR. Oh, I know what I had. This was a lot of fun. At one point I had blended IER, then I had blended EIR, and then I said, I don't want to have I before E, I want to have E before I. So I came up with blended EIR, in which we get some of each. Now, there actually, and I can't remember, there's a couple of abstracts I read here which may be doing blended ER now. Now, let me tell you about something that I have been doing that I think is kind of blended EIR. And let's say, for example, that you have a writing activity dealing with a strategy, a reading strategy, that is taught, and the students use the books, the graded readers, to use the strategy, to learn the strategy. I think we're blending it. We're not pretending it's ER alone. It's a blend. For example, once an activity that I've done, and I didn't call it blended EIR then, but I think I'm looking back on it, is what I've done is after students have read a book, I ask them to, everyone's got their book in front of them, they've read it, and then I'll tell them, I'll give them an introduction to skimming. And I'll say skimming is overall fast reading. Just quickly do this, and I demonstrate it. We talk about it. And then I have them skim their books for a limited period of time. Usually it's 1 minute or 2 minutes. And then I say stop, close the book, and write for 1 minute. Write about the book. They write for 1 minute. I say stop, pick up your book, skim again, stop, start again, write, stop, go back. We do it 3 times. So to me, this is blended EIR. And we could have different strategy activities that would take advantage of that. Okay, using ER and IR together. Okay, so it would be blended EIR. Okay? Then I think we're going to see a split in extensive reading, a split. And I'm calling it supervised and independent ER. Okay? Now, by supervised, I don't think it's instructed with a teacher in a classroom. It could be that, but it also could be like, just before this, there was a presentation by Aurora Sai on Japanese, learning Japanese, and she had a summer club, Japanese club, where 6 students you ended up with, or no, you started with 10, 6 were there, and it was she supervised. She didn't teach them, she supervised the extensive reading. Okay? Supervised. Now that could include the traditional extensive teacher-fronted class, but I think we might see more of this kind of supervised, non-classroom. I almost thought about beyond the classroom sort of thing. Okay? There was a study that was done a number of years ago on a diary study in Japanese. It appeared in Reading in a Foreign Language. She was from Hong Kong. She had some Japanese formal instruction, but she wanted to learn on her own, so she began her own program, and this would be called independent extensive reading. On your own, you engage in extensive reading, totally on your own. Okay? And my guess is that we're going to see quite a bit of this. And we're going to see quite a bit of independent extensive reading because of the internet. You don't have to have the library in the school. You got the internet, you got resources. Now, for a minute, think what this would mean for the definition of extensive reading. The teacher is a role model. 3 minutes? Impossible. I better wind up quickly. Now, if this is true, would there be core principles that are uniting, or would be independent and supervised be different things? But I've been given this a lot of thought, and I believe that these three principles would be common to supervised and independent extensive reading. It's got to be number one if it's extensive. You've got to read a lot. It's got to be self-selection. Well, under independent it's going to be, probably. And you've got to have the material to read. You've got to have the material to read. Now note what is not there. Which one jumps out at you is not there? Easy, exactly. And I don't think that that's going to hang in there anymore. My wonderful I-1, I think, is headed for the dustbin of history. I think so. I know, but if you are motivated and you're independent and you're doing your own selecting, we don't particularly care if it's easy. And just think what the internet can do for glossing words. You don't necessarily have to worry about 5 words a page or so much like that. I think this is going to change. I really think this idea of easy is not going to be as viable as it has been. Oh boy, dagger to my heart to say that, but I'm serious. I don't think this is really going to happen because of what's going to happen with extensive reading. Okay? Now, I think that maybe these are going to hang around, but they're not going to be as vital as the other three that I presented. Okay. Now, this again is my guess, just total speculation on my work. Okay, thank you. And maybe it's going to be there, probably. So there might be some principles. Now, very quickly, I think that we need to have more extensive reading and looking at listening, speaking, and writing. These are gaps in the research. And I know that I've got a good feeling. There's been some stuff, but not a lot. In addition, this idea of new meanings of known words, boy, I wish someone could do that. Grammar. Now, also, I would love to see research done in languages other than English. Boy, there's not much. Jane, you're going to do something with Spanish, right?
Yes, in 15 minutes.
In 15 minutes? Where are you going to be, Jane?
FLI 207, I think.
FLI 207. James from Wabash College is going to be doing something on Spanish. Yes. Okay, cool. Good. Now, long-term effects. Does it hang on 2 years later? Is it really long-term? Is the teacher a drug dealer? Is it really going to happen? Okay? Now, I think we want to look at extensive reading and young learners in foreign language context. We need the young learner stuff. We don't have it in foreign language context. And also, I think we're going to need to look at the internet. This is going to be so big now, just huge. Okay, I've got to stop. I'm done. The variability of the 10 principles. Okay, now, my goals were to do this. Oop. Okay, did we get there? I don't know. You sure your watch wasn't fast? Okay. Okay, now what I was going to do was have you think about what happened here and discuss with a neighbor. Okay, but I think we're out of time. Okay, good. Okay, good.
Thank you for your nice presentation. Since we spent all the time to give us, but
Can you answer questions outside?
Yeah. What time did your presentation start?
we will have
3? Okay, I've got. Do we have to vacate the room?
we have a 15-minute break after this.
Okay.
Could we take for more?
Let's do some quick Q&A here. Quick Q&A. Yes, Joe.
What makes you think that easy is going to be less important?
Okay, because I think with the notion of like the supervised can take many different forms. It doesn't have to be traditional classroom. Like Aurora, when you were talking with your stuff, that one student from what was her name? May, yeah. She was reading I+5, I+6, and she was doing a lot of reading. She was highly motivated. She was self-selecting, but she didn't want to read the easy stuff, and she read a lot, and she really liked extensive reading, but no way was it easy. Yeah. So I'm thinking, of course, it will still hang around, but I don't think it's going to be as important as I thought it was before. Yes, Mark.
In that sense, easy will go the way of readability in the sense that it was always confounded by motivation,
Yeah.
interest, compelling nature, etc.
Yeah. So, yeah, good. Yes.
I'm just curious because I've heard, of course I know about extensive reading, but I've also heard another term, FVR.
Again?
Free voluntary
reading.
And I'm just curious, do you see a difference between extensive reading and free voluntary reading?
Free voluntary reading is often looked at as an activity that might be done in a classroom. Okay? And also it could go by the name of DEAR. Have you heard of DEAR? Drop everything and read. Okay? And what I do in Hawaii when I'm doing this, I call it SURF. SURF. Silent, uninterrupted reading for fun. Okay, SURF. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Good. Yes?
In the 14 studies where students weren't given a choice,
Yes.
was it no choice at all?
Yes, completely no, just like intensive reading. Exactly. Here it is, read it. Yeah, and it could be from a book, it could be photocopied stuff, but they had absolutely no choice. And it was an extensive reading program. I know, I had to read these things several times to make sure I was reading it right, you know? Yeah. Yes, Charlie.
It's just maybe to follow up on Joe's point and
Okay.
this topic of easy.
Yeah.
And I think, we heard Paul Nation talking about 98, 99% level being so important. And I think to a certain extent, agree that online reading with the help of glosses and dictionaries might change the percentage a little bit because a little bit more scaffolding. But I think it's really clear that when a text is too far above the level, they can't read quickly, they can't read fluently, and a lot of negative things happen.
But what if that's what they want to do?
No, in some cases, I mean, and like you said before, you said there was a very motivated student.
Yeah, Aurora student,
very motivated, and they're focused on a certain topic, they might read above level. But for average students, I think the ease of the text is really important.
Okay. Good.
It's
Good.
just that the scaffolding can maybe change that percentage.
It might, yeah. Mark?
Don't we end up kind of with Harry Potter syndrome? That, they love Harry Potter so much
That they're going to tackle it, regardless, exactly. Yeah. Okay, we got to quit. It's, okay.